it, in, prestigious schools like this one and that one. So this will be a warm-up for that presentation. Let's see how it goes. So in the left-hand corner, hopefully technology is going to work. There's a man in a workplace, and what you're going to see is he blows up. His computer isn't responding, and he gets completely carried away, obsessive about his computer's not responding, and he goes mad. This is the security camera for the workplace. And he's walking out, he's going to get a sledgehammer, literally.
Oh no, oh
no. Notice the people in the other workstations are observing the whole thing. He probably didn't get a raise. Sometimes people just lose it altogether when the response is overreactive. And there's another kind of response. Let's just do this. It's repression. So just letting it out when some strong emotion comes, or repressing, and it can go inside and be personally debilitating, or it can cause taking it out on other people, or bullying, or just being harsh because one is frustrated inside. So those two extremes are not proper responses to negative emotions. And here's another one. This is from the earlier part. This is self-sabotage. And some people have that tendency that they, by repression of some negative emotion, they get carried away and it turns against themselves. And neither are good. So during the course of this time together, depends on how many people come fashionably late, but we'll have little breakout groups, and the focus of the discussion to be topical, but how to process emotions, specifically negative emotions. So here's the first of the four, and we'll pause at the end. First key is acceptance, power of acceptance. So here's a slide showing somebody that had a nice plan. They looked at the weather report, said it was going to be good, so they went for a walk on the boardwalk, and sure enough, it just not what happened. Plans don't always work out the way that we think they're going to work out. Fortunately, he found a place that sold an umbrella, and there he goes walking, when the plan was something else. So life is like that. You have to make a plan. One of the powers is having a goal, but when you have a goal, sometimes it doesn't quite work out like that. So challenges in life are some of these: financial, relational, occupational, physical, social. And when those challenges face you, sometimes there's a negative emotion that gets triggered. And sometimes the negative emotion gets bigger than you can handle. And when the negative emotion gets bigger than you feel you can handle, it's you feel trapped. When you feel trapped, it's something like putting yourself in prison, or it's self-disempowering. And there are people that study this. There are people that study this professionally, work with it professionally. Here's one of them, Dorothy Rowe. Depression is a prison where you are both the suffering prisoner and the cruel jailer, meaning you can let yourself out of jail, but you keep yourself in jail. So that's the negative emotion that's not handled well. So how do we go to the other direction? And this one of this ideas is acceptance. When something doesn't go as we thought it should go, or things like that. General topic, how to process emotions. Just repeating, denying emotions is unhealthy. Maintaining resentment towards situations outside of our control, it's also unhealthy. So this is a first step. Recognize whatever is happening, triggering the negative emotion and the negative emotion itself, they're temporary. Like romance. So in the beginning of a romance, the feeling is he can't live without her and she can't live without him. Woo, woo, woo. And statistics show 18 months later, it's just the opposite. They can't live with each other. So it's temporary. The attraction and repulsion program, the positive emotion and the negative emotion alike, they're all temporary. Just like this, it's snowing out. I don't know if you noticed. So sometimes weather is very troublesome. Sometimes it's very nice. But when it's troublesome, you go to work anyways. And similarly, when there's a temporary something or other that's troublesome, you go on with your purpose of life, which feeds into the next, having some clear idea of your purpose of life, despite the weather of the mind. As I'm speaking this, I'm thinking of a book written in 1946, and the author's name is escaping me right now, Viktor Frankl. You're nodding. You've heard it? Man's Search for Meaning. Any of others have heard that book? Man's Search for Meaning. It's two. It was written just after World War II, and the person who wrote the book was a Jewish man who was in a Nazi concentration camp, and he survived. And one of the things that helped him survive was this, that his mission, the purpose that he was waiting for him to fulfill, was on the other side of this. He wanted to be able to help people who were in circumstances that were outside of their control, like his. There's nothing he can do about being in the concentration camp. That was his situation, temporary. And he was in his mind, in his heart, and his whole life energy was moving towards how to help people, because his profession was a psychiatrist. And there he is, a psychiatrist in a concentration camp. And so there's details that's in the book. It's a little skinny book, and it's been reprinted something like 12 times because it's very powerful. Everything can be taken from a man except one final freedom, and that's the freedom to choose and the freedom to choose your own way and things like that. He has very short statements, powerful statements. So when you have a clear sense of a mission in your life, the temporary things that happen that are turmoil or unpleasant or difficult, you tolerate them and you move on. So as you tolerate weather, you can also tolerate the negative emotions, knowing they're temporary and there's something awaiting you on the other side. Here's a verse from Bhagavad Gita. Do anyone here need an introduction to Bhagavad Gita, or you all know what is Bhagavad Gita? Okay. I see a copy on the bookshelf back here. Could I have a copy? Thank you. Thanks. Here it is. It's a text that I've been, once upon a time, over 50 years ago, I was a college kid. And something happened. Without all the whole, the human interest story. I was going to college during the Vietnamese War. And my parents told me I was getting draft notices at home. Draft notice means show up. You're listed 1A. You got to show up and get an Army uniform, get on an airplane and go off to Vietnam and do the stupid war. So I said the stupid war, and I'm in medical school. Why would they want to take somebody out of medical school to go to a stupid war? It's double stupid. So I just didn't respond. They said, you got to respond. Because if you don't respond, you're in jail. So you got to respond. You say whatever you got to say. But so I was advised, this is a little deviation, but you get the picture. It's something what Bhagavad Gita has to say. I was advised you can fill out a conscientious objector form. And if you get an A in your exam, then they'll change your draft status. I know how to get A's in exams, so I got the form. And I couldn't fill out the form because I couldn't answer the first question. The first question was, state the nature of your belief such that you cannot take part in the armed forces of the United States of America. I know how to give an answer, but I didn't know what my convictions were, because that's what it's asking. And that was very disturbing. And so when I started asking that question more deeply, then another 100 questions came that I also didn't have answers to. And I said, phew, I've been too busy being successful to understand what my convictions are. That picture isn't right. So I want to do a timeout. And one of the timeouts was, without the details, I ended up having 7 different translations of Bhagavad Gita because people gave me one. Just because I was asking the question. There's something with inquisitiveness. On the other side, there's some response. So I started reading 7 translations of Bhagavad Gita, and I found out that I didn't understand it. And then some time passed, and I got this one, and then I could understand it. So I was puzzled. How come I can understand this one, the other 7 I couldn't understand? So what Bhagavad Gita is, it's an answer to questions that are beyond the temporary. And part of the idea is that who we are, 101 lesson is we're not part of that which is temporary. We're in this energy that's temporary, but we're an eternal entity, eternal conscious entity. And then through yoga systems, the elevation of that consciousness, reawakening of that consciousness through different yoga systems towards the stage of complete realization of self and one's relationship with the Supreme. That's Bhagavad Gita. And it's gentle, but it's powerful. So this is a text from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. The non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So same message, but it's straight from Bhagavad Gita. It's common sense. People that do counseling with people that are little overwhelmed with negative emotions, they teach the same lesson. They may not speak the Bhagavad Gita verse, but they teach this because the principle is to tolerate recognizing the impermanence, non-permanent appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress, like summer and winter seasons come and go. So there's something to do with accepting the situations that are temporary, that may be unpleasant. If, for example, we can't go for a nice picnic arranged with friends due to the flu, you could feel some resentment. Oh, I had this nice plan about, look at this, I can't go. So the resentment can be more hurtful than having the flu. One's on the physical and the other's on the mental. So what to do? Reluctance to accept in itself causes the negative emotions. Say it the opposite. If there's acceptance, you don't like the idea that you have a flu, but you take care of the flu, and you'll go on a picnic another time. So that's the acceptance is on the subtle plane or the mental plane, and there's realities that you can't have anything to do with, like Viktor Frankl. Here's Mother Teresa. Some people come in our lives as blessings, some come in your lives as lessons. So sometimes it's the interactive, the personal element that's, how do you accept that when some people are unpleasant or harsh or something? I just got a letter from somebody from China, because it's one of the places I used to go until the pandemic hit. And they were sharing with me, there's such and such person. I know the person. I have a really hard time getting along with them. But somehow I just decided, you know what? I'm going to try to get along with them. I know they have their minuses, but they also have their pluses. And so they've developed like a really nice relationship. The negatives, the unnice things, didn't just evaporate, but they can see past the unnice things or the unpleasant things, and they're developing some camaraderie. And that's just like so now that person is understanding what Mother Teresa is saying. There was something inside themselves that was the problem more than the other person. So the other person was triggering something that's inside themselves. They were reminded, or their emotions were triggered by something that was about them, and therefore they couldn't see the finer quality. And now they spend lots of time together. Probably get irritated a little bit with each other by this and that, but sometimes relationships are like that. Will you guys get married? You'll find out. Is acceptance disempowering? It can be seen that way. You're just accepting, you just shrug your shoulders, and it's a weak response. You've been defeated, just see. On the other hand, it can be empowering. You deal with the realities that are in front of you, and they are what they are. Now, what's a practical way for me to fulfill my purpose of life and have a meaningful experience while I'm doing it? Now, some people can't do that. They just hold on to past experiences or perceptions, and it goes on. And then that's where the negative emotions arise. But so acceptance is empowering. A nice example, Stephen Hawking. You all know this gentleman. So he was born in this condition, and he could have been, whatever, in negative emotion land. With, oh, how unfortunate, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't have a choice. He has to accept whatever was given to him. And he has a nice smile. And he's made contributions that are spectacular, at least in the scientific field. And he's a great example of the power of acceptance. I can't help but do something that's also from our spiritual texts. This is a painting of a king, pictured here, who had a very bad thing happen. He was cursed by a powerful young Brahmin boy to die in 7 days for something that he did that wasn't proper, but it wasn't a death penalty kind of experience or punishment, but that was what happened. And so he just accepted. And when he accepted, the painting is showing this very elevated, saintly person named Shukadev Goswami came along, and he gave him the instructions that fixed his consciousness beyond the temporary. And at the end of his 7 days, when the 7 days were completed, he ascended to the spiritual realm in fixed consciousness. He was saying, whatever this entity is that's going to come and bring about my death, I'm ready. Because my consciousness is now fixed. I know where I'm going next. I don't know if you've had the experience. My thoughts are going to, in the past 2 weeks, there's a person who's very, very dear to myself and many other persons, a sannyasi in ISKCON, who just 2 days ago left his body. He was diagnosed 1 year ago of having a type of cancer that they couldn't do anything about. And the doctors made, a pretty accurate prediction, said you have about 1 year. And for a good part of 1 year, he was very active and, you couldn't tell anything was going on. But slowly, it got more debilitating. And he didn't lose his happiness, and practically right to the very end. He was inspiring others and receiving others, and others were coming. And so, I just received this message. The last thing that happened, two days ago, he said, I want to go. And then the next day, he left. And the last thing that happened, this is because he's from Holland, so his Dutch friends said, the last thing that happened, he sat up, he opened his eyes wide, and he reached his arms up in the air. He left his body. So, although the circumstance was really awful, who could imagine the pain he was in, and he couldn't eat anything, he could drink water, but he was very fixed. He would do his mantra meditation every day. He couldn't speak because he couldn't breathe, so he was doing it in his mind. Anyway, it's a hero story like this. So when you accept a circumstance, there's nothing you can do about it anyways, and you fix your consciousness on who you are, what your mission of life is, and you take the resources that are going to help you achieve that mission of life, you can handle practically anything. This is the last slide in this section. There's a friend who teaches Bhagavad Gita. And he goes through the whole thing. It takes about a few months, but he's taught it many, many, many times. His name is Adi Purusha. And he was visiting in the U.S. and made this chart, so I like the chart. It's about acceptance. He said, this is the message of Bhagavad Gita. This is his way of teaching. When we don't accept something, we don't accept an undesired event, it becomes anger. When we accept it, it becomes tolerance. When we don't accept uncertainty, it becomes fear. When we accept it, it becomes adventure. When we don't accept others' bad behavior towards us, it becomes hatred. When we accept it, it becomes forgiveness. When we don't accept others' success, it becomes jealousy. When we accept it, it becomes inspiration. One more. Acceptance is the key to handling life well. So it's a key to handling negative emotions or dealing with negative emotions or overcoming negative emotions. And the whole of Bhagavad Gita is giving this teaching. Some of you know, except at least one of you. The last instruction that's given in Bhagavad Gita is surrender or take full shelter of Krishna. He's the speaker, Bhagavad Gita. So, what's success? Oh, there was more to this. So, climbing the ladder and having more, and becoming more powerful. This is a discussion session. So groups of 2 or 3 will also work. So you can pick a group. What is success in today's world? How many consider themselves successful? What is failure? How many consider themselves to be failures? And then you have your group, and then you can take 5-7 minutes. And we'll report back. I'm making some noise on the microphone, so because we have a lot of ground to cover. And it says at the bottom, debrief. And because we started late, I don't know if we're going to debrief. That's okay with you. So here's something interesting. Just historically, failures were bumps in the road. And modern idea of failure is the end of the road. One of our leading politicians likes to call people failures because they don't meet, his expectations, or, people do like that towards themselves and towards others. It's modern times. And in our modern times, of course, this is a China exhibit, but it's everybody, modern times. The pressure, social pressure, the expectations of others, especially, maybe expectations of yourself, but prosperity in different ways, the standards of success, there's lots of pressure, for sure. So the text, social pressures and social status, which form conceptions around success and failure, inhibit the ability to be open to accept our life condition and our emotions. I'm not married and I don't have children, but I have a lot of children. So I have lots of young people that come to me and talk to me about this. The expectations they have of themselves, or the expectations of their peers, or the expectations of their parents, and they feel it's a lot of pressure. So, just from the academic part, because this is a very prestigious school that has its expectations also, but there's things on the other side of all of that. So, social pressures. And strong people can accept the pressure and deal with it, but, it has its breaking point for most people. So here's a nice, this is from scriptural texts. I won't read the Sanskrit, but the Sanskrit is being spoken by this person. This is Brahma, who is speaking to Krishna. And his message is, my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So, tolerating and looking towards the spiritual purpose of life is the idea here. And similarly, look at this, another Bhagavad Gita verse. A pure devotee is never disturbed in any circumstances, nor is he envious of anyone, nor does a devotee become his enemy's enemy. He thinks, this person is acting as my enemy due to my own past misdeeds, so it is better to suffer than to protest. That's a Shakespeare line, right? From Macbeth. Shakespeare? What is better to suffer the slings and arrows of misfortune? So, Bhagavad Gita's recommendation is, if some misfortune is coming, whatever it is, it's some connection karmically from our past misdeeds. So I can't undo the past misdeed. And here comes something, it's unfortunate. Maybe there's some opportunity, or like Mother Teresa said, maybe there's a lesson here, both between myself and my past, and myself and the other person. So if one has, these are just some recommendations in dealing with negative emotion, and this particular one is power of acceptance. Okay. Power of goals. Power of goals helps us to right size our emotions, both the positive and the negative ones. So without a clear purpose or goal, our emotions have a tendency to escalate, become bigger than reality. This was discussed in the introduction part. It's called the avalanche effect. If you don't have a clear sense of the perspective of what's going on, then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. In the perspective of our life's goal, how important is this particular event or the emotion connected with the event that's triggering us? Probably a blip in the screen. Here's an example. Here's somebody, it's just an image of someone driving on a highway. So if you're driving on a highway and you have somebody that you're driving and they need to get to a hospital quickly and somebody cuts you off, of course it's possible to get angry because they cut you off, but generally speaking, you're going to stay focused on getting the person to the hospital because there's a mission, there's something very important to be done. Another nice image, same. When a river flows down to the ocean, over a period of time, so much water passes and so much water passes, and the smaller stones and pebbles, they get washed into the sea. And those larger stones, they become worn down and smoothed over because the river keeps flowing to the sea. So similarly, the people that teach this, overcoming negative emotions, if you have a goal and a purpose, it's stronger than whatever the obstacle or the emotion connected with an unfortunate obstacle that just surfaced or is already there. And so, right sizing of emotion. Now this is, again, from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a painting of a Queen Kunti. Those of you from India, you know who's Queen Kunti. The person who Krishna is speaking to in Bhagavad Gita is a warrior named Arjuna. And Arjuna's mother is the lady pictured here, Queen Kunti. And they were put through many, 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 many difficult situations again and again and again. And in her, she has some nice words to say, some nice advice. And one of her words is, Gange Vagham Udavanti. She's saying that my mind, like Ganges, the Ganga, flow forever towards you. Krishna, she's speaking to Krishna. And because when we have some calamity, you're there. We feel your presence, you come and you do something and help relieve the difficulty. And when the difficulty is gone, you go away. So better to have difficulties because you're there and our focus upon you becomes stronger and stronger. That's a devotional sentiment. And she's wishing that her mind flows like the Ganges flows. And her purpose is to maintain that connection with the Supreme. Okay. So this is an interactive thing. It's a personal step. It will take a few minutes. I overheard some of the discussion about success and not being successful. But since this is the power of goals, what's some of the goals? Short-term, long-term, ultimate goals. Lifetime goals. Everybody has a phone, and many people take notes on their phone. So if you want to take a note on your phone, go right ahead. I'm going to say something at the end. Another minute. Some of you are done already, but some are still working. So another minute. I'll make a couple comments. An image that I like a lot, it's not in this presentation, but in the center is a fellow sitting, kind of like in a yoga posture. And over here is a big mountain that shows, an embryo in the womb. And then there's a big space in between, and over here shows death, skeleton, something. So in between is life and what goes into space. That's what this question is. What's the mission of this human life? Second comment is when I think of this, I think of the Viktor Frankl story. You're busy, but at some point, maybe I can encourage you, at least if you don't read the book, read a little review of the book. You get a picture of his life, because at the end of his life, besides the extreme negative situation he had to pass through, on the other end, he became a very powerful person. He helped a lot of people with circumstances they couldn't do anything about. He was helping them with the emotions connected to the circumstance that was really unpleasant, that they couldn't do anything about the circumstance, but they could do something with their emotions. And it has a lot to do with your free will choice of this. What's your mission in life? You stay focused on that, and you can handle the negative emotions much better. Final, just yesterday evening, I was on a Zoom call with some people from Tamil-speaking people from South India. I don't know these people. Somehow I was connected to their Bhagavad Gita discussion group. And one of the questions was from a lady who was an MD. My guess from the picture and the sound of her voice, she's probably around 50. It's a guess, something like that. And she said, I'm a doctor, and I'm really busy, and I'm really satisfied in my profession as a doctor. And some couple years ago, I came across Bhagavad Gita. And now I understand that there's something in addition to my life mission of being a doctor, and which I'm very satisfied doing. But then what do I do with this other? Like a newfound, longer than this lifetime mission that involves something that I have to do in this lifetime for something that's beyond this lifetime. So how do I do that? So the answer I gave her, there's many ways to answer. This is one of the ways to answer, but it's time management. So you're all busy, and it's not like it's likely to become less busy as you go on in your education and your career and so forth. Likely it's to become very busy. Likely. Before coming to Chicago, I was in Phoenix, and there was a girl, a lady, who was doing her PhD in nuclear biology or something like that. And I asked her how many more years. She said 4 more years. I've done 2 so far. So she's really busy. Not a lazy person, but I want to learn more about Bhagavad Gita. I said, so how do you do that when you're really busy? Because you're here, and you're taking some time, which is much appreciated. But there's some reason why you're here, and it's not. It's the understanding that there's something more than just your occupation, your career development. and the steps that you need to do academically for career development. There's something that's important, not to minimize, but it's not everything. And where's the room? So it's the answer I gave to this lady, doctor, said, you're busy, you know how to manage time. When you're really busy, you want to make sure everything gets done, you make sure you put the big rock in first. This example. Here's a glass jar. That's called life. And over there's a big rock. And over there's some smaller rocks and some stones and some pebbles and sand. 5 different things. What goes in first? They all fit, if you do it right. The big rock goes in first. So what's the big rock? It's not. So it's for this doctor. It's not just your career as a medical doctor. That's certainly very important. That's a bigger rock. But the message of Bhagavad Gita, there's something that's beyond this lifetime. And you have to work on it or cultivate it. Otherwise, like becoming a doctor didn't happen overnight. Many, 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 many years of sacrifice. And now you're still sacrificing because you're a doctor. You're probably doing lots of things that help people on the physical plane, because she said it in her question. Now I understand there's also the need to take care of the soul. So how do we do this? Time management, put the big rock in first. So that's my advice. That's what this question is saying. And it's a nice idea. And then to do it, you have to do some lifting. You have to be clear what that bigger purpose is. So when you make a goal, it starts looking like this. There you are over here, and there's the goal over there. But it doesn't always work like that. It's quite uncertain. And there's obstacles, and it doesn't happen as planned, like that image at the beginning showing a man going for a walk on the boardwalk and it's raining. Life is like that. So here's a high magnification picture of tapestry or embroidery. When you look at under high magnification, it looks kind of messy. But when you don't take it and you step back a little bit, there's what it looks like. So with life, there may be things we're passing through that we don't really understand what's going on here. But as you mature and you have a bigger picture of what life is and what's really important, then there's the smaller, confusing little pieces have some purpose or plan. Okay, we're ready for key number 3. So far it's power of acceptance and power of goals, power of introspection. This is a fun one. There's an idea, popular idea, to control things, and it's not a new one. Can we really control? So today's culture is, if there's something doesn't work, we fix it, rather than the acceptance or tolerate. So when there's disharmony in relationships, you get a divorce. When you want certain fruits or something during some season, you import it. And instant communications to fix loneliness. Does it fix loneliness? Doesn't fix loneliness. Temperature comforts. I travel a lot. There's I could easily go off. People do so many brain-numbing things on planes. It's amazing. It's just amazing. I won't go into it. These scientific and technological improvements have increased our conviction of being able to control our lives and destiny. But it's not so. The reality is, things start to happen in a way that isn't part of the plan, and you're going downhill and you don't know where the brake pedal is. We're subordinate to laws much greater than us, and there's different categories, and we're subjected to them. So the planning has to have another feature to it, acknowledging that we're not in control of everything, except for one thing. This is the Viktor Frankl. His statement is our capacity to make choices, and the capacity to make a choice of what the real mission of life is, the real purpose our life or human life is meant to fulfill. Okay, now there's a couple of cartoons. Power of moving forward. We're going to associate with positive people. And this is a little cartoon. Jonas even came up with this one. It's promoting public transportation. And two of them. It's nice.
Je lichaam verplaatsen heeft zo zijn voordelen. Ontdek alle voordelen van de bus en de tram op de lijn.b1.
So the idea is meant to illustrate his positive good association. Here's another one. I'm going to show this one twice.
Je lichaam verplaatsen heeft zo zijn voordelen. Neem de bus of tram en vermijd parkeervergunning. De lijn.
The power of good association, right? Let's try to do it again.
Je lichaam verplaatsen heeft zo zijn voordelen. Neem de bus of tram en vermijd parkeerproblemen. De lijn.
Okay, that's good. So there's a phrase in Sanskrit, sadhu sangha. Sangha means association. Sadhu means people who have elevated consciousness. So keep good association. Find persons who are situated in higher consciousness and keep their company often. And in that sadhu association or good association, they'll help you understand the higher purpose. And when you're thinking of the higher purpose, the problem or the negative situation and the emotion connected with it seems to go down because you're thinking of the higher purpose. There's this little saying, where attention goes, energy flows. So if your attention is going to a problem and a problem and a problem, it can become obsessive and debilitating. And if your attention goes to, where do I want to go? I mean, this is Stress Management 101. It goes like this. They both start the same. Life throws rocks at you, and it hurts. Then what? So if you're in the reactive mode, you pick up the rock and you throw it back at where the rock came from. You become reactionary and retaliatory and get even with the other person or something like that, or throw it against yourself. Oh, I'm bad. That's et cetera, et cetera. Then the other one is life throws rocks at you, and it hurts. Then you take the rock and toss it up in the air a few times, and you consider, what are my options? You're in this reflective rather than reactive space. And so where your attention goes, what's something that's beneficial for me instead of, the rock hurts? What's something that gives me energy and is beneficial for me? And you do that because you're in this reflective space. Don't keep feeding the negative energy. It simply grows. Take small steps every day. incremental steps to trust yourself and to trust others, incremental steps in doing something positive for yourself, incremental steps in applying mantra meditation to your life, because that does help, definitely. I mean, that's a whole other topic. It's a whole other topic. Mantra meditation has been shown clinically to be very beneficial. I'll just anecdotal. I'm into anecdotes today. One time, some years ago, I was in Kunming. What part of the world are you from? South Korea. You know where Kunming is? It's the western part of China. The closest city, big city in China to India is Kunming. So I was doing presentation on mantra meditation in Kunming. Nice. And after the first session, the organizer said that they work for a corporation, and they got a text message while that first session was going on that one of the executives in their corporation that morning, it was a Saturday morning, jumped from a 7-story building and splattered on the sidewalk below. And the corporation, the company said, all of our executives must take a meditation class. It's mandatory because it's known clinically without all the details. It helps relieve stress. It doesn't necessarily take away the rock or the hurt that one feels because life threw the rock at you and it hurts. But it does something to the neurological system, and it does something to the mind, the physical and mental level. And mantra meditation will help with getting some clarity, getting a pause, and looking at the direction you want your life to move in a higher consciousness way. Don't make promises to improve. I heard your discussion. Don't make promises to improve yourself that you can't keep. It will only exacerbate feelings of failure. That was one of our topics. And read wisdom literature like Bhagavad Gita. And here's, I think, the last slide, almost last slide. Count your blessings. Besides things that aren't going well, or the rock that hit you. Think about all the care and elements in your life. Write a personal letter to Krishna or to that which is the source of all things for you, thanking him or her for these wonderful things. Think about the sun, beautiful nature, your breath, digestive system, taste and vegetables, your parents, friends, education, etc. And a really good, this is a little promotion, a real good opportunity for doing this is this Body, Mind, Spirit retreat. It's a distance away from Chicago, but if you can come, please come. It's a really good place for reflection and introspection, because that's what this one is, introspection. By chanting Krishna's holy name, one cleanses all the dust of the mirror of one's consciousness. So that's the presentation, and you've been very patient with me. I did a little storytelling, but I hope that's okay. Any comments or discussion from anybody? Sound system's not working.
I have a question about doubt. I feel like there's a lot of great things in the presentation that was just given, but a lot of times just when sitting and thinking of what I should do, that doubt is what prevents me from doing what is the most productive or the best thing for me. And so I feel like because it permeates, like this little voice of doubt permeates my consciousness a lot, I feel like I don't necessarily do the things that I need to do. So how do I get rid of that little voice?
I heard your sharing with the group. Productive and successful people have more than one goal commonly. And then there's multi-processing of those so many goals and et cetera, et cetera. It's a little bit like this doctor lady from yesterday evening. I mean, she made a strong impression. I don't know anybody else in the audience. But it's a little bit like, maybe it resonated because I was also on a track to become a medical doctor, and I know what a mountain that is. You have to just put other things aside, and you just do that because it's something you just do. So how do I decide? When you make a decision, it's evaluating what's the big rock. It's that question of what's really important, and there may be other big, significant size rocks, but it's time management. And once you have for yourself identified the big rock, and I would say for the persons assembled here, and even people that aren't assembled here, spirituality, there's this saying, from spiritual well-being, material well-being follows. Like the shadow that's cast by an object, it moves according to the movement of the object. Material well-being is the shadow, and the spiritual well-being is what casts the shadow. So my recommendation for you and for anybody is just keep asking yourself the question, and you'll get answers. And if you don't have the answer, keep asking the question, and you'll get it. Just works. Doors that you didn't even see were there before. All of a sudden, there's a door, and then the door opens, and you go through the door, and there's this other space that you didn't even know existed. So, but it's the I want to know, the inquisitiveness, and I'm recommending. This ultimately, the spiritual well-being comes first. That's the big rock. And do those things. It doesn't have to be all-consuming. You don't have to become a monk. But spiritual well-being, and that which is going to bring about spiritual well-being, then that light will help you prioritize. And then when you prioritize, some things just go in the parking lot. They're important, but they're going to go in the parking lot for now. Because the spiritual well-being is what's most important, and then there's other things that, like you're right for you right now, it's your academic work, and that's super important. Maybe exercise and keeping your health together, and your diet and all those other things, they're also important. But they follow behind the spiritual well-being. And I'll say it again, when spiritual well-being light goes on, then you can see other things much better. The pots and plates in the room, you can see better when the light's on. And you can sort through, this is important, and that just goes in the parking lot. What's sand, and what's pebbles, and what's the rocks, and what's the big rock becomes more clear from spiritual well-being. Big rocks first. So whatever, if you may not know, for you, what's that spiritual well-being? What's the path? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Just keep asking, and things will start to move. That's how it works. Yeah. Oh, the sound system works now?
Yeah.
Look at that.
As I've changed my own relationship with my suffering and my negative emotions to become less harmful to myself, I find it more and more difficult to see people that I'm close to and I have relationships with who are still having more difficulties with the way they see the world and the way they conduct themselves emotionally. But I know them well enough to know that they either don't want to or aren't right now ready to change the way they see things and the way they feel. How do I navigate my relationships with those people as I move along on my own path?
It's life. So there's me, and then there's the world, and then there's other people that have their free will choices and their psychophysical natures and things. Just three things. One, pause. I mean, not to say, but the question itself is a pause question. That means you go into reflective space rather than emotional space. You just, let me try to clearly understand the situation, which you've done a good job articulating. But the next step is, in what way can I be of value or service to this other person? And one of those things can be just be very patient and be a good example. Or whatever it's not just check a box, but, it's a relationship. And in what way can I be of service to be of, on the spiritual well-being side, be helpful to this other person? And you may not have the answer, but if that's how you're thinking, that energy is going to flow from you towards the other person. You become a well-wisher in spirit and in your mood, without necessarily having a clear idea of what the actions or speech or conduct or anything else is going to be. But you're just a well-wisher in the mood of service. And then as your light goes on stronger, to the degree that light becomes stronger, then some inspiration will come. Here's maybe something I can do. And don't try to overdo, just, something that gives a little indication to the other person, for example, that you care. That can mean a lot to people. Sometimes it's just like, no, they don't care. They're just saying that or whatever, because they're so down or whatever, so beaten. But it'll make its mark. And even if it doesn't register on their radar, it's just you made the gesture, and then how they respond is up to them. And then comes this other, what's your mission? No, you just ask yourself that question. This is this reflective space. My life is not to fix other people. That's not my life. I can be of service, but not fixing. So they have their path, they have their karma, they have their stuff. And if there's some resource I can provide, if I can be such a resource or provide such a resource, I can offer it, then they can make their decisions to say yes, no, or maybe. But the relationship doesn't become damaged or even tarnished, because your consciousness is well-wishing, and you encourage them in ways that they'll feel. So at least some positive energy coming from you towards them. And it may take a long time, as you said, maybe they don't want to. They're stuck. So you care, but you don't, your business is not to fix their being stuck. You just do some service according to the intelligence, inspiration that's coming from within. And you got your mission in life. Someone else? Yeah.
Can I ask what was your inspiration for having that conviction in a spiritual realm, as you speak of? Like there's a goal that's more to something in the physical world, and you have that conviction.
I'll give an honest answer. My introspection says, and my understanding of what the spiritual texts say, this lifetime is part of a many lifetime journey. And so from the time I was small, I had questions. And I didn't get answers. And I won't go through it, It was not encouraging to continue to ask those questions because people patted me on the head and said, "Oh, isn't that cute?" But they had no idea. So I stopped asking because I got busy being successful the way that I was supposed to be successful. The social expectations thing. And then I shared with you, it didn't go away. It just got covered. And then when something came up that got it uncovered, I didn't have to. I could get the A in the exam and, just fake it, but I couldn't do it. So inquisitiveness is something that's within me, and I'll say it in three ways. One, there's a higher reality. I have that conviction. Two, I know that I don't know. And three, I want to know. Very simple. And it's inside. So where did it get? It's many lifetimes. That's my answer to that question. But it's, a human being has the potential of asking those questions. Even if you don't have answers, ask the questions. And if you really want to know, and you keep getting resources that will help you get those answers. So that's the fuel in my tank. Because I came across, 16, 20 different things that didn't have answers either, aside from the ones that didn't have answers when I was growing up. But when something came along that, that's good, I just kept following the thread. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't difficult either. It was a journey. It was like adventure. The unknown, and just keep going through doors that weren't even there before. It's adventure. So I like adventure. But more than that, I like answers. I want, what's the real deal? Not somebody's idea. Not somebody else's idea. I want the experience. Inquisitive. Jigyasu. You know the word in Sanskrit. Brahma Jigyasu. Atato Brahma Jigyasu. Human form of life is meant for that. Somehow the light went on, and I just kept asking. It's fun. Someone else? Yeah. We have the microphone over here? Oh, you had... Okay, we're over here. I'm sorry.
Hello. I had a question about the decisions and control, and then consciousness, and having control over consciousness, and what exactly that meant.
Okay. Nice question. Nice question. Here's a puzzle. I'll answer your question by giving you another question, another puzzle. Some years ago, I heard my spiritual master say, the soul is both conscious and consciousness. And I heard him say it a few times, so I understood it was important. And I thought, wow, that sounds cool. Then I wanted to know, what does it mean? Which is what your question is. So I came across something that's from the Upanishads that says that as a lamp is both luminous and it lights up objects in the room like pots and plates. So the soul is both conscious and consciousness. So what we have control over is where we direct our consciousness. The consciousness is not the mind. The mind is an indicator of consciousness. Supposing, for example, someone's a drug addict. So where's their mind going to go? To get their addiction fulfilled. That's a certain type of consciousness. That's a mode of nature consciousness influenced. And so if consciousness, I'm making choices, this is the Viktor Frankl message, I have a choice to make where I want my consciousness to go. And that's not something anyone can take from me, or circumstances can be taken away from me. It's of the soul. Where do I direct my consciousness? Which means, where do I direct my mind? Where do I direct my life, my actions? Where am I going? What's this human life going to end up? And it's depending upon the choices we make. So free will is of the soul also. And free will is our consciousness. So there's the material consciousness with varieties, and there's spiritual consciousness. That's without material varieties, but it's of another nature, a transcendental nature. So I'm in control of that. Now, material nature conditions me, conditions all of us. And there's a way to go beyond that material conditioning, or that the influence of that's just using the negative emotions that I'm experiencing. I still experience negative emotions, but there's a way to transform those negative emotions to spiritual emotion or to higher consciousness, and that's a choice. It's not something somebody can do for me. It's something I have to do. I need some assistance, but they can't do it for me. It's like this, not fixing other people. You can be a resource of consciousness that can be of light for other people, or you can be one for yourself. And you need, in other words, another way of saying what I'm saying, we need quality spiritual guides or spiritual teachers, so that with the free will choices, if we go in that direction, we're not going to end up in the ditch because we didn't really have the lights on proper and hand on the steering wheel. So it's a choice that we make, and it needs some mercy along with the choices we make. But that's also a choice, to take guidance from wise people. So that's what it means. That's one thing that we have control over. The circumstances of life we may not. We can adjust things, but destiny is very powerful, and that's not going to take away my free will and the choice of consciousness of where I'm going to direct it. Is that satisfying?
Maharaj, you spoke about basically, I started thinking about it when you asked us what the goal of life is, what our goal is. And then you also drew inspiration from the image that's on the Bhagavad Gita, where you have like a cycle. You have people, you have basically the soul is never dying, but it's kind of like a cycle. You have the embryo,
Yes.
and then the skeleton, and
Yes.
it just goes on and on. And basically from that image, whenever I see it, unless one is very, very rich or very lucky, I guess for the grand majority, the most important thing is progress, spiritual progress, getting even one step better with every lifetime. But when we were discussing whether we consider ourselves successful or not, what success actually is, it's still very much in the domain of the physical, materialistic sense.
Yes.
So, it's just very hard to always nudge oneself into practicing that spirituality when the physical is what determines so much of our existence.
Yes.
And our duty, like we're duty bound.
Yes. I'm in full agreement with everything you said. So it's not easy to break out of conditioning. We're tightly bound up by the ropes or gunas of material nature. You know the term. So I'm thinking of this discussion with the medical doctor lady last night. She's a very smart lady to be a medical doctor for all the duration of time that she's been and be very successful and very composed. She's a well put together person. And she's understanding, her terminology was, that's my prescribed duty. The Sanskrit is swadharma. Okay, now I've come across this spirituality, and now I'm understanding it's paradharma or spiritual dharma. No, I haven't been doing that for 50 years. And I'm successful in my career, my prescribed duty, and that's for the rest of my life, working life as medical doctor. So now, she wouldn't be, at 50 years of age, she wouldn't be starting a spiritual journey if there wasn't some seed already within. There's a seed already within. That means she's done something before this lifetime, and now the light's going on. So then it's practice. It's making choices. Back to this earlier question about consciousness. That's it. Each of us in this room, everybody in the world, as long as we have teachings that take us to a higher consciousness, we're making choices, whether we're going to go there and how far we're going to go. And it's not just, okay, I'm going to make a quantum jump. We don't have the eligibility, and we need lots of help or mercy. So it's cultivation. Bhakti means a life. Bhakti yoga means a life of devotion, and it's a sort of cultivation. So little by little by little by little. That's what this incremental steps message was. Little by little, but just keep making little steps. One of my favorite sayings, life-guiding sayings, progress is a series of small steps in the right direction. You got to have the right direction. Otherwise, it's not progress. But small steps make progress in the right direction. Keep going, little by little by little. Okay, I think we should end, and it's time for dinner. You've been all very patient. Thank you.